Israel rejected proposals for a ceasefire with Hezbollah on Thursday, right after the United States, France and several allies called for a 21-day halt in fighting. Israel has launched the heaviest airstrikes against Lebanon since the 2006 war over the past week, killing more than 600 people, as months of cross-border fire with the Iranian-backed Hezbollah movement spiraled close to all-out war. Foreign Minister Israel Katz said in a statement Israel would fight, quote, with all our strength until victory and the safe return of the residents of the north to their homes. That dashed hopes of an imminent truce expressed by Najib Mikati, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, where hundreds of thousands of people have fled their homes seeking safety, and added to fears of an Israeli ground invasion. On the streets of Nahariya in northern Israel, support for a hardline stance. Tens of thousands of Israelis have also fled homes along the frontier with Lebanon.
We must finish with this, to kill them, to stop them, to do something, but not stop the war. No,
we don't believe them. They want to finish us.
We want to see a diplomatic resolution and a solution to prevent an all-out war.
The ceasefire call, for Gaza as well as the Israel-Lebanon border, followed intense discussions at the United Nations on Wednesday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, heading to New York to address the UN, said he had not yet given his response to the truce proposal but had instructed the army to fight on. Israeli airstrikes overnight hit around 75 Hezbollah targets in the Bekaa Valley and southern Lebanon, including weapons storage facilities and ready-to-fire launchers, the Israeli military said on Thursday. In one Israeli strike, at least 23 Syrians, most of them women and children, were killed when Israel hit a 3-story building in the Lebanese town of Yunin overnight, the town's mayor told Reuters. In June, southern Lebanon, a family killed in an Israeli strike was buried. Hezbollah members turned up to the funeral, where the mood was one of defiance. At least 72 people were killed in Israeli strikes on Wednesday, according to Lebanese Health Ministry statements. The sharp escalation in border warfare between Israel and Hezbollah has sent many nations scrambling to prepare for evacuations from the region.
Ukraine now and in the future.
U.S. President Joe Biden announced more than $8 billion in additional aid to Ukraine during a visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to Washington, D.C.
We have a strong security agreement with the United States, and we are grateful for it, and we will fully implement it.
The aid will include the first shipment of a precision-guided glide bomb, a medium-range missile that gives Ukraine a major weapons upgrade. It'll also provide the country additional air defense, unmanned aerial systems, and air-to-ground munitions.
Mr. President, can you bring it into his wall?
Of course we have to.
Earlier, Zelensky was at the Capitol to meet with Democratic and Republican lawmakers. The Ukrainian president has faced rising criticism from some Republican leaders, including presidential candidate Donald Trump.
Take a look at the war happening right now in Ukraine. It would have never happened if I were president, to start off with.
Trump said he would meet with Zelensky on Friday in New York. This after telling a campaign rally in North Carolina this week, quote, "We continue to give billions of dollars to a man who refused to make a deal." In the 2.5 years since Russia began its full-scale invasion, Congress has approved nearly $175 billion of aid and military assistance for Ukraine and allied nations. Many lawmakers say they expect Washington will need to approve more money to help Kyiv within the next several months.
The conduct alleged in the indictment, the foreign money, the corporate money, the bribery, the years of concealment, is a grave breach of the public's trust.
Federal prosecutors charged New York City Mayor Eric Adams with bribery, wire fraud, conspiracy, and accepting illegal campaign contributions on Thursday. Manhattan's top federal prosecutor, Damian Williams, detailed a years-long scheme alleging Adams received improper valuable benefits from Turkish nationals in exchange for pressuring city officials to allow Turkey's new consulate to open, despite safety concerns.
The mayor sought and accepted well over $100,000 in luxury travel benefits from some of the same foreign actors who arranged many of the illegal campaign contributions.
I will continue to do the job for 8.3 million New Yorkers that I was elected to do.
Adams said he would not step down at a news conference outside Gracie Mansion, the official residence of the mayor, which federal agents searched just hours earlier. Adams said he would fight the charges in court and denied any wrongdoing.
If it's campaign violations, I know I don't violate the campaign.
That's right.
If it's foreign donors, I know I don't take money from foreign donors. And I ask New Yorkers to wait to hear our defense before making any judgments.
Adams is New York City's first mayor to be criminally charged while in office. Prosecutors said he disguised campaign contributions from Turkish sources by funneling it through U.S. citizens. Those funds allowed Adams to qualify for an additional $10 million in public financing. Turkey's foreign ministry had no immediate comment.
Hurricane Helene roared through Florida and into Georgia on Friday as one of the most powerful storms to hit the United States. Even before its arrival, the storm had caused power outages for over 1 million people and severe flooding in several areas as rain bands lashed parts of coastal Florida. At least one fatality in Florida has already been blamed on the hurricane, which roared ashore just after 11 p.m. Thursday night as a Category 4. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis urged those in the path of the storm to hunker down.
Well, good evening. We're here at the State Emergency Operations Center.
And warned of further loss of life and property damage.
So this is a big storm. It's a powerful Category 4 storm. But it's also just very large, and it's going to have impacts are being felt, have been felt, and will continue to be felt far and wide. And so when Floridians wake up tomorrow morning, we're going to be waking up to a state where very likely there's been additional loss of life, and certainly there's going to be loss of property.
Helene was forecast to dump up to 15 inches of rain in some areas, causing severe flooding. The storm surge was forecast to reach up to 20 feet in the Big Bend area, where it made landfall. The director of the National Hurricane Center, Michael Brennan, earlier called the scenario unsurvivable. Authorities said it would likely be several hours before any rescue personnel could head out to help those in need. In Taylor County, the Sheriff's Department wrote on social media that residents who decided not to evacuate should write their names and dates of birth on their arms in permanent ink so that you can be identified and family notified. The NHC expects Helene to move more slowly inland over the Tennessee Valley in the coming days.
A ban on a women's-only art exhibit in Australia has been lifted. On Friday, an Australian court ruled that the art gallery in Tasmania did not discriminate against men. Curator of the Ladies' Lounge at the Museum of Old and New Art, Kirsha Kachel, celebrated the decision.
This is how we build a beautiful society, and I'm very inspired by the occurrences in the courtroom today. In 30 seconds, the patriarchy was smashed, and the verdict demonstrates a simple truth. Women are better than men.
A lower court in the state had banned the Ladies' Lounge after a case was brought by a male visitor in May. It triggered an uproar among supporters and artists. To protest the ban, the museum moved some of the contents of the Ladies' Lounge to a women's toilet. But the state Supreme Court overturned the ban, arguing the lounge was an attempt to promote equality by highlighting the lack of equal opportunity for women. Female supporters danced and threw paperwork in the air after the verdict was announced.
We'll see how the men take it. The men are a little hysterical. I'm a bit concerned. They're troubled by the power of women. They may appeal, but they're not appealing to me.
This was the skyline in Khartoum on Thursday as witnesses and military sources said Sudan's army had launched a major operation to regain ground. It is the biggest push here by the army since early in its 17-month war with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, when it lost control of much of the capital. Witnesses reported heavy bombardment and clashes. That's as army troops tried to cross bridges over the Nile that connect the three cities that comprise the greater capital, Khartoum, Omdurman and Bari. The army retook some ground in Omdurman early this year, but it has been unable to dislodge RSF ground forces embedded in other parts of the city, and mostly depends on artillery and airstrikes. The RSF has also continued to make advances in other parts of Sudan in recent months. The conflict has caused a vast humanitarian crisis. More than 10 million people have been displaced, while parts of the country have been driven to extreme hunger or famine. Diplomatic efforts by the United States and other powers have faltered, with the army refusing to attend recent talks in Switzerland.
Street ended higher on Thursday, with the S&P 500 scoring a record-closing high as chip stocks rallied and investors welcomed some encouraging economic data. The Dow added 0.6%, the S&P 500 climbed 0.4%, and the Nasdaq notched another 0.6%. Weekly jobless claims fell more than expected, signaling a steady labor market, while the final reading of gross domestic product confirmed that the economy grew 3% in the second quarter. That eased investors' fears that the Federal Reserve's supersized rate cut earlier this month may have been prompted by an unraveling economy. Meanwhile, Chinese leaders, just days after unveiling a stimulus plan, pledged to deploy necessary fiscal spending to spur the world's second-largest economy. That gave metal prices another boost and lifted shares of copper miners such as Freeport-McMoRan, as well as lithium miners Albemarle and Arcadium. Rob Slimer, technical strategist at RBC Wealth Management, explains why a rebound in Chinese markets is good for commodities.
Some fairly negative economic backdrop in China, but we already started to see those indices like the stock exchange in Hong Kong or the stock exchange in China start to show signs of bottoming over the last month or so. And so the recent stimulus measures that just came out have caused a lot of these markets to rally strongly. You have a very similar pattern developing in many of the industry groups and commodities that are globally sensitive to the global economy. Copper is a really good example. When China's economy starts to improve, they use a tremendous amount of industrial metals like copper.
U.S.-listed shares of Chinese firms such as Li Auto, Temu parent PDD Holdings, and Alibaba all saw healthy gains. Shares of Wells Fargo added more than 5% after a report showed the banking giant had sent the Fed a review for lifting asset cap restrictions. And shares of Southwest Airlines gained nearly 5.5% after the carrier raised its third-quarter revenue forecast.
Southwest Airlines announced profit-boosting plans on Thursday, including partnerships and vacation packages. However, activist investor and critic Elliott Management dismissed the plan. At the Southwest Public Investor meeting on Thursday, CEO Bob Jordan said the airline wants to avoid a fight with Elliott, but the hedge fund isn't interested in cooperating. Jordan called the new changes the carrier's most transformational plan. Other moves include assigned seats, extra legroom options, overnight flights, and keeping the bags fly free policy. Southwest expects these measures to boost margins and add $4 billion in earnings by 2027. But Elliott said it was just empty promises and called for credible leadership, accusing Jordan of playing with investors' money. The fund renewed its call to remove him and is seeking a shareholder meeting to agree leadership changes. In response, the airline has offered concessions but refused to ditch Jordan. It has struggled to boost revenues in line with soaring costs, leaving its profit margins all but wiped out. Passenger volumes remain below pre-pandemic levels, and its shares have dropped about 40% over the past 3 years. Southwest has downgraded its outlook at least 8 times in the last 20 months, despite strong travel demand. Jordan acknowledged the need for a response, saying, quote, "Our model is not broken, but it needs ongoing improvements." On Thursday, Southwest increased its third-quarter revenue forecast and announced a $2.5 billion share buyback plan.
French video game maker Ubisoft is lagging behind its rivals, and Reuters can reveal an investor pushing for its sale has gathered support from 10% of its shareholders. AJ Investments, which has a 1% stake in Ubisoft, also called for a CEO change some weeks ago. This move, exclusively seen in a letter by Reuters, comes a day after Ubisoft postponed the release of the game Assassin's Creed Shadows to February 2025, as well as cutting its net bookings guidance. Shares in Ubisoft, run by the founding Guillermo family, have plummeted 30% so far this month, touching 10-year lows. Not only from the emergence of the letter and the 3-month delay of its latest game, but also a muted reception to the recent release of the game Star Wars Outlaws. The halt in the Assassin's Creed release and result of the Star Wars game follows a poor run of form in the past 2 years for the video game publisher, with games like Skull and Bones and Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora falling short of analysts' and investors' expectations. The underperformance has sparked questions about Ubisoft's strategy of launching new licensed intellectual property. This at a time when gamers are sticking with already proven
Shares
titles.
of AI chipmaker Micron Technology surged as much as 19% on Thursday, thanks to a strong revenue forecast that signaled robust demand for its memory chips. If the stock gains hold, the company could add more than $19 billion to its market value. Micron's high-bandwidth memory chips, or HBMs, are used in NVIDIA's popular AI processors. Strong pricing for HBM chips is expected to help boost gross margins, which had been pressured by expensive manufacturing costs. The company's earnings, reported after Wednesday's market close, sparked a broad chip rally Thursday, with several companies, including NVIDIA, Intel, Broadcom, and AMD all posting gains. Micron also said revenue growth for the prior quarter was its highest in a decade.
H&M has ditched its earnings margin targets for the year. That's after higher discounting and costs hurt operating profit in the third quarter, along with fierce competition from Spain's Zara, its bigger rival, and Chinese cut-price retailer Shein. Shares in the Swedish fast fashion company tumbled as much as 8% on Thursday morning before recovering some ground. Weaker consumer demand amid high inflation has caused H&M to struggle with profitability. It said that costs around shutting down online outlet Afound hurt income too, along with currency movements and the cost of markdowns increasing over the quarter. CEO Daniel Erver said he estimated the year's operating margin to be, quote, lower than 10%. H&M did warn in June that factors including material costs made the 2024 target harder to reach. But scrapping the goal entirely with no new margin guidance puts more pressure on Erver to turn the brand around. H&M has been on a marketing blitz, hosting a London Fashion Week event with pop star Charli XCX. Erver said that he believes this investment in elevating the brand would ultimately boost sales and profitability. H&M's operating margin for the first 3 quarters was 7.4%, with a third quarter margin of 5.9%. The last time H&M produced a double-digit operating margin was in 2017. Commerzbank says it will hold a first round of talks with UniCredit on Friday. The Italian bank is pressing for a tie-up, possibly a takeover, after revealing earlier in the month that it had bought a 9% stake in the German lender. But the promise to talk does not mean Commerzbank is ready to give in. On Thursday, its supervisory and regulatory boards both said they back the bank in its bid to stay independent. The takeover is also opposed by management and employees, and has been criticised by the German government, which retains a 12% stake in the firm. Finance Minister Christian Lindner spoke in the European Parliament this week.
The stylistic. How UniCredit acted surprised us, raised questions, and did not strengthen our trust in UniCredit.
Now, Friday marks the big test for new chief executive Bettina Orlopp, who only started work this week. She says the bank is open-minded and will analyse what synergies could come from a tie-up. Commerzbank shares extended gains as she spoke and were up around 6% by mid-morning. UniCredit chief Andrea Orcel shocked politicians with his sudden move to buy a big stake. But he's laid out a vision for a rare cross-border merger in banking and won the support of some major investors. 6 European central bank policymakers have also told Reuters they broadly support the move. and view Berlin's opposition as contrary to European integration. Orcel says all options, including just walking away, now remain in play.
Stop this crime. Stop it now. Stop the killing of children and women. Stop this genocide. Stop sending weapons to Israel. This madness cannot continue. The entire world is responsible. Israel reoccupied the Gaza Strip and has almost entirely destroyed it. It is no longer fit for life. After destroying the buildings, the homes, the educational and medical centers.
المساكن والمباني والمرافق الصحية والتعليمية التي ترفض تنفيذ قرارات الأمم المتحدة هي تنفجر.
Our joint statement was a clear call. It was a call for a temporary ceasefire to open up space for diplomacy to achieve a deal that allows civilians on both sides of the border to return to their homes safely and securely. And I would add that the statement was indeed coordinated with the Israeli side. There are now discussions ongoing today in New York. Our teams are continuing to have discussions, and so you'll probably hear more later in the day, but those discussions are
History has shown us if we allow aggressors like Putin to take land with impunity, they keep going. There are some in my country who would instead force Ukraine to give up large parts of its sovereign territory, who would demand that Ukraine accept neutrality and would require Ukraine to forego security relationships with other nations. These proposals are the same of those of Putin. And let us be clear, they are not proposals for peace. Instead, they are proposals for surrender.
We have to keep pressure on Russia to stop the war and to make truly lasting and just peace. It's a top priority for us and for other freedom-loving nations to achieve not a freezing, but real peace for us.